All right. Hey guys, Nadya Martinez AKA GothamGeekGirl here. I am super excited to be joined by some very special guests today. Join me as we delve into the world of pop culture, TV, movies, comic books, and video games with the occasional special guests, interviews, and industry professionals. I'm so excited to be joined by Marguerite Bennett and Marc Silvestri as we talk about one of my first and absolute favorite comic series. It's mature, it's violent, it's gritty, there's crime. TOPCOW is back, reimagining the hit supernatural thriller Witchblade. The series was around since the 90s and it's been around a couple times. Now it's back. It's penned by New York Times bestselling Marguerite Bennett. Hi, Margaret.
Hi, pleasure to meet you.
And it's visualized by artist Giuseppe Cafaro from Suicide Squad and Red Sonja. The creative duo is working together with the original co-creator, Marc. Hey, Marc.
Hey,
And
happy to
Marc,
be here.
yes, super excited to have you. Marc is the CEO of Top Cow Productions and one of the founders of Image Comics. If you know me, you know how much Michael Turner, Marc, Aspen Comics, and Top Cow have meant to me for my entire life. They've held a special place in my heart and my love for comic books. They really got me into comics with drawing the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in comic books. It's truly surreal to be talking to you. I just wanted to show like some of my
Oh,
books I have, like
oh,
some of these
nice.
super throwbacks. I got the special complete hardcover Witchblade, which I was super excited to get. Going way back with the Hunter Killer.
Oh, yeah. Going way
I
back
got
with everything.
yeah, the art of Marc Silvestri. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
can keep going. Like you guys really
You
got me
just
into
picked
it.
those up, didn't you? Come on.
No, I've
You
had
just
these. I've had these for
you
like
went down
20
the
years.
street.
I've
Oh,
had these
thank
for
you.
like 20 years.
Well, thank you for your support. You know, it's people like you and your listeners that allow us, Marguerite and I, and all of us creators to do what we do. So thank you so much for your support. And we are partners here. You buy what we make, we can make more of what you want to buy. You know, that's how it works. It's a perfect deal, perfect symbiotic relationship.
Absolutely. You guys also got me like to I was an art student before I got into journalism. I got my BFA in illustration. So I kind of at one point wanted to be a comic artist because of you guys.
Oh, okay. I would love to see what you've done or what you used
Yeah.
to do. Or do you
Yeah.
still delve in that a little bit as a
A
hobby?
little
Or
bit, a little bit.
yeah.
I would love to show you some of my first stuff. It's very inspired by you and Michael.
Oh,
Like
okay.
pretty females. I always love drawing. And coming from a fashion
Guilty.
background too originally. So
Oh,
it's
nice. Oh, see, okay, cool. I'd love to see that stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
I'd
Yeah.
be honored.
Yeah.
But first, how are you both doing today? Super excited to be chatting with you.
Yeah, we're doing great. We're just happy to be here. We're happy to be doing what we do, and again, happy to be talking to you and your viewers. And let's talk comic books,
Oh
specifically
yeah.
Witchblade. Yes.
So the new Witchblade, it's going to reintroduce the series to diehard fans and new fans. And it's going to take a contemporary take on familiar characters with a new story. It's going to hook new readers and rekindle the energy and excitement that fueled the 90s image revolution. So it was originally running from 1995. I was 6 years old to October 2015
Oh,
to December
just rub it in a little
2017
bit. Yeah, there we
to
go.
January 2020. So the series was created by Marc, David Wohl, Brian Harberlin, rest in peace, Michael Turner. The comic series saw a television series. It saw a manga.
And an anime as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
It relaunched in December 2017 with Caitlin Kettridge and Roberta and Granada. And I believe that series focused more on Alex Underwood as a main character instead of Sarah. Now we're returning to Sarah. We're going to have, you described it, Margaret, as black magic, heavy metal, pouring blood, and pouring rain in the dark labyrinth of New York City. I love that.
Pretty accurate. Pretty
That's
accurate.
okay.
I love that. That'll sell it. So before we get into the series, I want to talk a little bit about your careers, your inspirations, and your introduction to comics. Marc, you began your career penciling titles like Uncanny X-Men and Wolverine in the late 80s. You've worked with other legends, and you, along with Todd, Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Jim Valentino, Willis Porticio, Eric Larson, and you formed Image Comics in 1992. You launched Cyberforce and laid the groundwork for Top Cow. And you had Cyberforce, Witchblade, The Darkness, Hunter Killer, Weapon Zero. When did you decide that you wanted to create your own comics as a career and kind of step away from like Marvel and DC?
When did you sleep?
Yeah.
Yeah, when did you sleep?
I get my nap time in there. You know, it's like, oh, it's like basically the idea of Image Comics was screw the man. It's like
Yeah.
so. Yeah, I mean, we were punk ass kids back then. We're still punk ass, just not kids anymore. But yeah, I actually started in comics in 1981. So I've been at this for more than 40 years. So I've seen it all, literally all of it. And comics has been a smorgasbord of good and bad over all that time. And I've seen all of it. And after 10 years of the grind, and anyone who works in comics will tell you, and maybe you dodged a bullet, Nadya, with that one. I'm not sure, but because comics is like, uh, for a creative person, it's hard to get more rewarding than comics. I'll just say that right now, because we've dipped our toes over the years once TOPCOW started in other media and other things, video games, like you mentioned, and TV and animation, all that stuff. And there is no faster way to get your creative idea out there than comic books, right? Because at the end of the day, and one of the reasons why we formed Image Comics was that we hated to be told no. And that's the first word out of every Hollywood executive's mouth. No. You're halfway through your sentence. No. Okay. Well, we were tired of hearing that back in the day with Marvel, and we were even more tired of not even having a little participation in the creations that were being sold for millions of dollars, and creating billion-dollar franchises, of which we saw nothing, right? And after 10 years in the business for me, I had already been working with Chris Claremont on the X-Men in my 20s. I mean, there wasn't very far for me to go beyond that back then. And I loved working with Larry Hama on Wolverine because I've had a blessed career, working with Chris and Larry and other writers. And I'm a huge fan of great writing, which I will get to with this woman right here, and why I'm so happy and thrilled about this collaboration. But it was 10 years of the grind, with not seeing too much in return. I was like, I could pay the bills in X-Men, for what it was, and back in the day, it paid some good bills. So I was thankful for that. But there was nowhere left for me to go. So I was actually contemplating leaving comics at that point. And this was this was the early 90s, right? And lo and behold, a couple of lunatics, named Rob Liefeld and Todd McFarlane, and also I think probably Eric Larson was at the time too, were cooking up this scheme, because Rob Liefeld was dipping his toe in the creator-owned world with Youngblood. This was before Image formed. And then I guess the idea was, well, how about more people, right? Because before that, there had been obviously creator-owned properties out there. Dark Horse was doing things with creator-owned stuff. The Pennies were doing things. The big difference, and I tell this to people with Image, and then I'll shut up, is that what we were able to do, because there was 7 of us, right, that in the early 90s mattered in comics, and comics had reached a point where it needed something, right? People were getting kind of complacent and bored. And, obviously when Michael Keaton came out as Batman, that like a real spark, right? But before that, the only things that really blipped on any radar were things by guys named Frank Miller, when he shook everything up with Dark Knight, and other than that, I mean, we had Watchmen, obviously, that shook things up, but they shook them up within comics, and then they went away. Right? As far as the shakeup is concerned, not the creators, but the shakeup. So comics was looking for something. So us Image guys were just at the right time. We had the right attitude. We were just pissed off enough that we were able to go through this. We're not getting anything for it. It's not one person leaving. It's not 2 people leaving. It's not 3. It's 7 of Marvel's biggest creators. That was the difference. That's why everyone followed us. And what we did, we didn't create creator ownership, but we mainstreamed it, right? We made it safe. We gave creators a safe haven because we proved that it could work in a big way. And because of, people like you, both of you, supporting what we did, we were able to get away with a lot of mistakes, which we made, but we were able to take a lot of chances. And the only reason why we could do that is because of your support. So thank you, everyone, for that. And 30 plus years later, we're still here in spite of, the calls I would get from Marvel every week from the editor-in-chief saying, come on back. You guys are going to be out of business in 6 months. No harm, no foul. Come on back. We do the X-Men again. It's like, no thanks.
I consider it the big three now.
But then we're the third largest publisher. And the thing is, like, when I say that we mainstream creator ownership, it's because 30 plus years later, 32 years later, I guess, the deal is the same. For anyone that comes to Image Comics to publish a comic book through us, that they have this great idea and they want to own it, come to Image, you own it 100%. We do not want any of it. You can give it to your kids, your grandkids, unless you don't like them. It's up to you. You can do whatever you want. I always use Robert Kirkman as the perfect example because everyone knows what The Walking Dead is. Robert Kirkman owns The Walking Dead. Image Comic does not own one piece of it, which really pisses me off some days. But after all this time, it's still the same. And I think that's what I'm most proud of. So that's where I come from. I did a lot of, and again, I'm grateful for all the opportunities I had with Marvel and working with some of the best writers out there. So I've been blessed, and then it was time for a change. And now that change has allowed me to work with people like Marguerite, on properties that we created, and we can do what we want with, and unless Marguerite, you want to say something that against it, but I feel like, and I'm happy about this, but I feel like I give you a lot of latitude to have some fun.
Yeah. Yes, you do.
With this character.
I'm
right?
very grateful for it and very aware of it.
Well, and I'm grateful for it too, because, and I will stop talking here, but the voice that Marguerite brings to Sara Pezzini, and I'll let her talk about that. I think it's some of the best writing I've seen in comics, and I can't even remember. So it's the fans are going to love it. They're going to understand what we're doing here with the reimagining. They're going to get it from the first issue, and I think they're going to go, yes, this is Sara Pezzini in the 2020s, right? This is not, the 1990s anymore. We can all agree that things have changed, and a character like Sara Pezzini needed this new voice. And with that long introduction, I'll let you and Marguerite talk for a while.
Now, here's the thing. I could spend 6 months talking to Marc and still not get a fraction of the stories that he has. I mean, like, he is one of my absolute, not just favorite people in comics, but just favorite people. So,
that's so sweet. Thank you.
You are a consummate gentleman. That is the highest praise that I can pay a man. So,
thank you.
My
I appreciate
favorite.
that.
Marguerite, for you, I want to know, what was your first comic book, if you remember, and your first introduction to Witchblade?
So they're linked, actually. So my first comic book was an issue of Spawn, drawn by Greg Capullo. Yes. That was given to me by Travis Covey, a friend of mine, and I was like 7 years old at the time, and obviously was not supposed to have this, which is exactly why I wanted it.
Shame. That explains a lot, by the way.
Witchblade was probably when I was 8 or 9. It was during summertime that I got a copy of that. I think that was one of my older cousins, and that was the only way that I would get comics, was as cast-offs from older male friends and relatives. Comic book stores weren't like they are now. It was not a place that you were going to bring your elementary school age daughter. And I was so enchanted by it, and and by like the darkness and just like the exquisite detail. I mean, people think, or to take this as a bad faith argument when I start, so please bear with me. But I, was a huge reader even as a child, and so like there was a lot of just natural understanding for me going from children's books, which used this lyrical combination of art and image, to adult comics. Where it was the same thing, where it was, the words on the page were never just like, and then such and such happened, and then it was depicted. It was always something that was meant to counterbalance and heighten the two. And it just made so much beautiful and poetic sense to me. And so I'd always, I mean, I declared at 4 years old to my parents that I was going to be a writer. This is what I was going to do. And they were like, that's great, sweetheart. You're going to need a day job.
Pat on the head.
Exactly. But they were very supportive, and they, this is how long ago it was, is that my father, he would staple these little booklets together for me out of computer paper, but again, like this was like the early 90s, and so you'd have to pull the perforated edges off of the sides for him to make the little booklet for me. And I would draw and illustrate, and I would do it, just like, a children's book or a comic book. And from then on, like I dedicated myself to, like, this is what I was meant to do with my life. And when I graduated college, I wound up spending the summer writing a novel and used that as my portfolio to get into an MFA program at Sarah Lawrence. And while I was there, I wound up taking a graphic novel writing class taught by Scott Snyder.
That guy.
That guy.
What does he know? Oh.
And a year after the class, Scott reached out to me and said, I keep on thinking about these stories that you turned in. And if you want to do this, because this is a hard career, I do think you are ready, and I can set up an audition for you. And so, but it was like, but after that, like, you're going to have to jump through the hoops of fire. But, fortunately, DC liked my stuff. And then shortly thereafter, I was at Marvel and then Aftershock. And, at the height of it, I think I was working on 7 books at once, which is how I know that Mark wasn't sleeping when you were rattling off that list. And I was just the writer, goddammit. Oh, I'm sorry. Are we allowed to swear on that?
It's
that's kind of a mild swear, especially
I'm from New York. It's okay.
I don't want to mess with anyone's livelihood though. Like, if your video has ad revenue or monetized, I know everything is becoming so corporate and so censored. So I do want to.
This isn't live, right? You can just kind of bleep what you.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Don't worry.
And so it's been a delight since then. And I've spent now almost 15 years in comics, and then I've also worked in animation now, and prose, and video game adaptations, and some other things. But comics is always where I return. Like, this is the first primal childhood love, and I hope to always have it in my life.
Aww. I guess that'll bring me to another question I actually had for later. How do you feel about, like, the changes in the industry, not just in terms of, like, the technology, the tools, the access, but I guess also, since you mentioned, like, working in animation, how do you think it is working in this industry, and how you see the future changing? And not to say, like, the scary stuff like the AI part, but in terms of, like, what you like to use. Yeah, that's a whole what you like to use for yourself, I guess.
Mark, would you like to go first?
Oh, sure. Like I said, I've seen it all, but there's never been a more drastic change than there has been since the early 2000s, right? It's coinciding with the with social media and all that stuff. But the real change happened for me when I thought something's going on here. So I went to San Diego Comic-Con. And from my window at the hotel, I could see the convention. I don't know if you've been there, but it's just long ass, gigantic, half-mile wide convention center. And I was looking, and there was this line. All right, and this is like 2000. You'll tell me, because when I tell you what it's about, you'll say, "Oh, it came out then." But this is the year, and I was like, "What is this line?" So I went. It was time for me to get there, and it's like, so I just asked some random person, "What are y'all waiting for here outside in the heat?" And someone said, "Oh my God, it's Twilight." And I went, "The hell is a Twilight?" So I had no idea what that was, right? And it's like, this is San Diego Comic-Con. What is a Twilight, right? So I'm not sure when that came out, the first one, but that's when I first remember thinking, something's going on here. And then, of course, when Marvel saved themselves from bankruptcy with Iron Man, right? That was the big thing, and that was the first time, because by that time we had already done the Witchblade TV series, right? We did that in 2000, which I still scratch my head how we managed to do that. Get that on a cable cable channel. It was a non-Marvel, non-DC, non-Batman, non-Superman, female lead, comic book superhero. We managed to get that on TV. I don't even know how we did it. Actually, I do, but that's another long ass story. But so, that's when things really changed, when Iron Man came out, and suddenly not only Hollywood, but the rest of the world realized that there's more to comics than Batman and Superman and this guy that we kind of know about called Spider-Man, right? So suddenly there was value in comic books and the characters that comic books inhabited. Right. Before that, I don't think the rest of the world gave it a rat's ass. I think manga was different, right? In the sense that was more mainstream in that world. It was okay to be reading a manga book on a subway, right? It was nothing unusual here, there, or anywhere that was. In America, that was not the case. Like Marguerite alluded to, even being a woman trying to go into a comic shop was bizarre. Everything changed when mainstream media caught on, because then the rest of the world caught on, and suddenly you had conventions that, wow, half this audience now here are women of all ages. It's not just dudes, right? It's not just the BroCon anymore, right? And when we did Witchblade back in '95, this is before that sea change even happened. We were seeing there was an audience that was not being catered to, right? That was being purposely ignored, right? And that audience was the female audience. Why can't you guys have heroes too, right? What's wrong with that? So we came up with, okay, DC was doing nothing with Wonder Woman. They didn't believe in that property. It was valueless to them. But there's something there, right? And okay, we are going to create this strong female character, and this artist that no one had ever heard of before, named Michael Turner. We had him, and I'll just say this right now because it's true. And I've worked with so many artists, great artists, incredible artists. That's another part of my career that I'm blessed with, is I was able to mentor so many just wonderful artists. But I don't recall ever seeing that kind of raw talent and develop at the speed that he developed at. So it was a real pleasure working with Mike, and his vision and his aesthetic brought Sarah, the original version of Sarah, to such a broad audience. It brought everybody in, plus this new audience that nobody cared about. Right. Suddenly you had all these young women, these girls and women of all ages going, oh, this is kind of cool. This is a female character that I can relate to. All right. And the way that the dudes have been relating to this character. And it's like, and we really struck something there, So that was part of the change, I think, that I saw personally. And then, of course, when the mainstream hit, everything changed. And then, because content has always been king in Hollywood, it's always been that stupid ass catchphrase, it became even more so. And comic books, the best kept secret in all the world that we all knew about. These are stories that have been told around campfires since the dawn of fire, right? But nobody realized that we were telling these stories, because nobody outside of comics cared about it. But these were great stories and great characters. And now suddenly Hollywood realized that there's money, there's gold in them Dar Hills, right? And then everything changed for comic books. Suddenly, comics became, and this is going to sound cynical and cold, but I'm using terminology from Hollywood, but our beloved characters and stories are characters and stories. In Hollywood, suddenly those things became IP.
Yeah.
Right. So they became intellectual properties. Yeah. Just a blanket term.
Yeah.
Right. But on a positive, what that meant was that suddenly all of these things had value. Right. And when something has value, it gets to a broader audience. And I always tell people this, that I see at conventions, because conventions almost died, right? They just almost went away forever. And I kind of credit Iron Man and things like that with saving conventions because it spread the word of comic books. You don't have to be Batman. You don't have to be Superman. You can be a D-list character and people will love you. Right. So I always tell people, I don't care how you got into this room, into this convention, through anime, through animation, through the movies, through comic books, preferably, my personal favorite. I'm just happy that you're here. Right. Because if that didn't happen, maybe Marguerite and I would be doing something else for a living. I don't know. But so that's been the biggest change, I believe, was that suddenly, Marvel hit a good recipe that people responded to. And then, obviously now we're going through another change with superhero stuff. But I think, we're poised with things like Witchblade and things like the Darkness and so on and so on and so forth to like bring something new to the table, something fresh. Right. So we're in a good spot.
That was the perfect answer. I have no
Well, go ahead and make it more than what I said. So
I mean, I've been, working so fractionally, compared to your experience. And, I broke in 2013, which was the year after the Avengers movie, so comic books were already on, or comic book movies, rather, superhero movies, I mean, as the mainstream were dramatically on the rise at that point. And so I've been here, while they've had their heyday and only then. And so, now it's watching the mainstream exhaustion, fatigue set in. And so, my big, like, I don't want to sound exploitative, but like I'm using this as a bit of a gateway drug to be like, comics are so much more than superheroes.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, they really are. Which again is not something that was the case, right? Because Marvel and DC were never going to publish those types of books. Yep.
That's what sets Image apart, 100%.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's the benefit of a company that's light on its feet, that is fan supported, and run by people that don't want to do things like that have been done before, right? So a big part of what we publish is mostly non-superhero stuff, just really cool ideas, character stuff, character-driven ideas that whoever created it and whoever owns it, they do what they want with it. More power to them. We're just happy to have a way to get that out there for them, right? And to reach people that they're not really into capes, which is great because there's lots of cool stories that have nothing to do with capes. Lots of great characters, and there are those characters that kind of combine that world. That leads us back to Marguerite and Witchblade.
So before we break down the new I guess like reboot, can we use the word reboot? I want to know quickly, Mark. Yeah, reimagining. That's a better word. Quickly, Mark, for you, you have like iconic pencils and you're an industry mogul. You've definitely had a huge influence on so many artists picking up the pencil. I can see it in their pencils like David Finch, Joe Benitez, Mike Choi, David Nakayama, and so many other favorites. I read that you discovered comics through your cousin, who was an avid collector. Can you tell me who some of your influences were? I believe you were a big Frank Frazetta fan and Sci-Fi fan.
Yeah. I grew up, like Marguerite said, she got her comics from, her, older male friends. I got my comic exposure from my cousin, who's a huge collector, like a year older than me. But even when we were kids, he had like 1,000 or 2,000 comic books. I would go to his house and thumb through his stuff, and I that was my first exposure to things like Jack Kirby. Right? It's like even as a kid, I understood Jack Kirby. Right? I know a lot of fans go, I never got Jack Kirby. I had these square fingers. Like, no, you don't understand what it is about Jack Kirby that makes him Jack Kirby. People like him, John Buscema was a big influence on my actual artwork. People see that fairly quickly. Yes, Frank Frazetta. Because I grew up not necessarily reading comics as a kid. I grew up sci-fi loving geek kid. I love movies, sci-fi movies, classic monsters, Universal monsters, fantasy stuff. All the old Ray Harryhausen movies and all this. I grew up on all that stuff, and that's what I loved, and that's what I responded to. And You know, I first saw Frazetta's work because I have an older brother and older sister that would read all of the paperbacks, right, back in the 60s, you know, and such, like the Mars books and all that, Edgar Rice Burroughs books, Tarzan and all that. I remember the first time a piece of art moved me. And my mom used to take me to museums all the time. I grew up in Chicago. I live in LA now. But she took me to the Art Institute and we would see all these like classic paintings. Like, oh, that's nice. Who's this Rembrandt? I don't know. It's cool. I guess it's all right. And there was this one Tarzan cover of a paperback that was done by Frazetta. And it was just Tarzan and his freaking Tarzan loincloth, you know, practically naked. He was ready to fight these lions coming out through the reeds at him. And that's the first time I felt anything about artwork. I'm like, the power that Frazetta brought to his work. And the storytelling that he brought to us within that single image that's made me feel so much, right? It's like, I wasn't even reading Tarzan back then, but I had to read Tarzan, right? I was just a kid. So that was the first time that I got really the bug for art. Even though I drew on the walls and my mom let me draw on the walls. It was like, you know, she was a little too accommodating sometimes, I think. But yeah, so my influences were people like John Buscema and Bernie Wrightson. I love Bernie Wrightson's stuff when I first saw Swamp Thing, and obviously the Frankenstein work that he did, and Frazetta, Walt Simonson, those guys that had a dynamicism to them that was just ingrained. J.C. Leyendecker, for instance, as an illustrator, if you look at his work, his static images had a way of conveying movement, right? That was very unusual for that kind of work. Norman Rockwell for his character stuff. You know, all these things I kind of absorbed. You know, even Watterson with Calvin and Hobbes, I absorbed that. And, you know, if you look at my Darklings, it's Calvin and Hobbes. You know, so when I draw the darkness. So those are my influences, you know, and I just carry that into comics with me, you know, and for varying levels of success, that's what kind of got me to the gigs that I got, you know, so which I'm thankful for. While you're doing it, I'm looking at your bookcase behind you.
Oh yeah,
good stuff.
Loaded. I think I have everything Michael Turner's like ever done.
Well, I can see Fathom right there, right behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And every like collector thing, the Aspen team, like they're like my favorite people. Last year, Peter let me introduce the you know how they're doing like the digital component now?
Oh, okay, yeah,
with Aspen. Yeah, he let me like announce it at San Diego at the panel. It was so fun. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah,
I
it's
always like tear up seeing them.
yeah, Mike, yeah, it's he was taken far, far, far too early. And,
yeah, he
I mean,
was 3 years older than I am.
Yeah, it was 38.
I think he was 38.
Yeah.
So sad.
And seriously, I mean, it's like we would sit there at the studio and just like marvel at, because we used to do a lot of trading cards back then. That's how we train new artists, because you know it's like it's different. It's not the comics, and we first started giving trading cards to Mike, and it's like, oh, this is really good. Because, and I tell this story, you know, real briefly, but Mike's portfolio is one of the worst portfolios I've ever seen in my life. And I joke because he became Mike Turner, right? And one of the best that we've ever had in our business. And but it's funny because David Wohl, who's editor in chief at the time, you know, was looking for some help on backgrounds for the darkness we were about to start, and you know, we had to search out, and he brought Mike Turner in without me seeing anything, right? And you know, he comes up to my office and, oh, Mike Turner's here to show you some background stuff. So, who's Mike Turner? Like, oh, it's like this guy. Here's his portfolio. And I looked at portfolio. I was like, you brought this guy in? You know that we're busy here, right? Right? Because it was awful. It was an awful portfolio. There was nothing in there worth saving. But I went down there to meet him. He's like, and if you've ever met Mac Turner, he's like the nicest guy, right? Just gracious and nothing phased him. And he was just, you could just feel the energy. He just wanted to learn, right? And I think he was waiting on tables, you know, and he decided to like, he wanted to get into comics. And so I was like, I looked at the portfolio. I was like, okay, well, I got a lot of stuff to do in the studio. We had the Pit there, and we had like Billy Tan there. We had Joe Benitez, Dave Finch, right? I'm surrounded by this talent. We had Brandon Peterson in there, um, and here's Mike, and it's like standing in the middle of the pit, and it's like, okay, Mike, do me a favor. Now I had a table down there too, and I was working on stuff. Like, go over there. There's this open table, and draw me a building. All right, and he goes, cool, okay. He goes over there, with his attitude, and comes back like half an hour later or whatever, and it's like, okay, here you go. And he shows me this building. And it's like the best way I could describe it was, a vertical loaf of bread with holes in it. Right? It's like, oh, man. But I already liked the guy because he's just that guy, right? He's like, oh man, he's just like a really good guy. It's like, how am I going to do this? So I was like, okay. Back then we had a thing called, like what you have on your shelves, books. Right? It's like some of the kids watching this may not know what those are, but they're books. We had this reference library, right, of these books. And so I pulled out this book of New York City, right, architecture. And I was like, okay, I'm going to just pull the Band-Aid off of this right now and just get it over with. So I looked and I found like the most difficult building in that book, like just this great old school New York architecture, right? Bricks and sconces and moldings and all this stuff. It's like, okay, Mike, go draw me this building. Right. So he goes away. Same attitude. He knew I didn't like what he drew. It's the same attitude, nothing. It's like, okay, can do. Right. Goes away for an hour or two, whatever. It's like what it was. He comes back, it's like, okay. He's like, all right, let me take a look at this. And so he shows the thing. And it's like, it's one of the best buildings I've ever seen drawn. Right. And it's like, because I'm looking at the old one, I'm looking at like, I go, Mike, man, I'm sorry, man. How the hell did you do this? Right. It's like, and his answer was just very straightforward because that was Mike. He just wanted to learn. And it's like, it was all good. This was shit. This was good, but it didn't matter. It was like, he just wanted to learn. And he just said to me, he goes, no one ever told me to use reference before. And that was it. And from that point on, it's like, none of us could believe just how good and how fast. And he had his influences, right? But he made it his own with his own very specific aesthetic. That was just so pretty, right? Like his characters, even if he exaggerated them or whatever, they were so pretty to look at. The men, the women, the world he put them in, everything was just so attractive, right? Which is difficult to do and tell a story and do all that stuff. So anyway, that's my Mike Turner story. And I just probably went through all the rest of your time on Earth.
Right. So we're going to get into the reimagining of the new Witchblade series, which is dropping July 2024. I got to read an advanced copy. I'm loving it. It has a similar tone to the original series. I am a huge fan of thrillers, so I was super excited to see this come back. Basically, the series follows Sara Pezzini. She's an NYPD homicide detective who comes into the possession of the Witchblade, which is a supernatural, sentient gauntlet, and it bonds with a female host. I'm wondering if that's going to continue on, if it's just going to be a female host kind of thing, what kind of changes you're going to make, and the mythology. Can you kind of tell us, Marguerite, how you worked with Marc on, bringing back the series, but kind of putting your own touch on it?
Oh, sure. Well, I'm very spoiled because I get to have these frequent Zoom chats with Marc where we go over everything, on the macro level and the micro level. And I'm able to get feedback from the man himself on the things that I want to embroider into the mythology. And before that, we started cooking on this in November 2019, I think. So pre-pandemic, yeah. And then the world got suspended there for a while. And then we came back with a vengeance. So I've been able to percolate for a very long time on the kinds of stories, that I wanted to tell, and the kinds of, not changes, because they're not whole cloth, but I guess reimagining is the right word. I'm sort of struggling for a better, a refinement, of the original principles, or ways that they can spread their tendrils through the cultural anxieties of 2024 and on.
And you described it as a ferocious story full of monsters, sexuality, vision, and history was irresistible. It's sleek, vicious, ferocious, and a lot to say about power in the 21st century, and will be the first time we're stopping the roller coaster to let more people on. And you've mentioned you've loved it since you were a child. We talked a little bit about that before. Sarah's legacy. I guess how does it feel for you, like, coming onto this character and I'm trying to like
Sure. Mm-hmm.
without being like repetitive of what you've read, and kind of like, starting over, like you mentioned, this is not the 90s anymore, and kind of putting like a 21st century spin. Like, what kind of new things do you think we're going to see with Sara, with the lore? Yeah, I guess basically let's focus on Sara and like your love of the character.
I mean, I can't say but so much, because like it so immediately starts to spoil things.
Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, and Mark, if you have a a diplomatic or tactful way to jump in and save me from this question, please.
I got nothing for you. You're on
Oh
your own.
no! Oh no!
No,
So
but
one
it's true though. I mean, every answer we have is fraught with spoilers, because one of the things
yeah.
that Marguerite is so good at is weaving mystery in here, right? And I'll just kind of reintroduce my thrill here with Marguerite, and that we met for the first time in a car ride to the hotel at a convention we were at,
Oh.
and I gave her the quick elevator pitch that we were relaunching Witchblade with a new #1. I've been a fan of hers, and I thought her voice in other work would be perfect, and then I saw or read what she was doing with Sara, and I went, no, this is beyond what I could have possibly hoped for, because she does bring this voice to Sara that builds on what she was before. This is a darker Sara. Her description that you just read off is perfect, because this is a harrowing ride. We meet Sara, she's in a dark place. And what I love, what Marguerite has done, is she's done something which not a lot of comic books do. You see that more in TV series and streaming and stuff like that, but she's given Sara an actual arc, right? It's like, when we meet Sara, by the time, the first year is through, we're going to have a different Sara on our hands. And it's because this destiny she has found herself with, makes her realize who she is as a human being. It's not just about the supernatural world. It's about Sara discovering who she is. So with that, now, Margarita, now it's your problem. You go for it.
Perfectly fair. Perfectly fair.
And last year's Witchblade, the complete collection Kickstarter, there was a glimpse of like an armor redesign. And now there's the new universe with Giuseppe. I guess, how is it also working with Giuseppe and like honoring and staying true to the series, but kind of also working with the new art style and still paying homage to the original?
I mean, Giuseppe is tremendous. Like I cannot tell you how much I bless the day that Mark found Giuseppe. Like, he is just, oh, he's so passionate and he's so driven, and his attention to detail is phenomenal. And I mean, you just could not have found a better artist or asked for, a more dedicated partner in this project.
Yeah, his work is beautiful. I feel like it's like new, but it still like shows respect like to the original.
Yeah. And again, it's like everything comes from Sara, and Sara is coming from Marguerite right now, in a real place of authenticity. So I'm going to put Marguerite on the spot right here, and I want you to talk about Sara, and I want you to talk about this voice that you brought to her.
Absolutely.
Because this is the critical component of this reimagining, is this fresh voice that Marguerite specifically brings to Sara Pezzini. And that's why I think people are going to embrace it, and not only not be disappointed, but be excited and thrilled to see where Marguerite takes their favorite character. So you go ahead and talk about Sara.
All right. So starting, okay, so my parents, my mother, my father, my stepmother, my stepfather were all history professors at one point or another, or taught history and government. And so I grew up spoiled because of my knowledge of history, and particularly American history and culture. And so if you're Sara Pezzini in the mid-90s, you know, as an adult woman, then she's Gen X, and the major you know, hurdle and cultural anxiety that she overcame in her coming of age is disillusionment. Is that, you know, they came out of this sort of golden nuclear age, you know, the family, the picket fence, the house and life you were promised, and you're realizing that, you know, with this increasing corporate greed in Reagan's America, that human nature is not always good, and that even the things that you were promised now feel confining. Whereas if you are, you know, a 26, 28-year-old in 2024, your major cultural anxiety is trauma. You watched 3,000 people die on live television as a child, and then both your parents lost their jobs as the economy crashed, and then you watched, you know, racial and sexist tensions rise in your young adulthood, and now we're headed for another economic collapse and a pandemic. And so you're maybe in a very different place emotionally and spiritually, and your outlook on the world is very shifted. And so, you know, to compensate with that, and then specifically, you know, Sara has defined herself through her father's murder. Like this, on top of everything, this trauma is now the anchor point. The trauma of all traumas is the thing around which she defines herself. And she can never let that go. And it becomes there's sort of a litmus test whether you think Batman is about justice or if he's about obsession. And you know, Sara at this moment is not about justice. Sara at this moment is about obsession. And she is living, you know, this black coffee, whiskey in the bottom drawer, slat-ribbed alley cat, junkyard dog existence of like, she's gonna find the next bad guy. She's gonna find the next bad guy. And this is the thing that keeps her going, because taking her eye off that impossible prize would mean realizing how cut off she is from humanity, from you know, from herself, from her mind, from any want outside of, you need to live for your father, you need to live for revenge. And when the Witchblade crashes into her, you know, it's this force of life, this cosmic spark of creation, and it really does like collide into her. And suddenly she is filled with every sense and freaking mycelium of connection to the rest of the pulsing living world that she has always tried to shut out. You know, music, food, you know, sex, emotion, like everything is just cranked up and just pulsing with life. Like her body changes, you know, her mind expands, her vocabulary improves. She winds up spitting like a molar with like her back teeth and doesn't need that anymore, or like a filling from a molar. And you know, it plugs her in a way that is now overwhelming. And so in a way that's sort of meant to parallel you know, the change from like the disillusionment but now to trauma, but also in the era of social media, of being connected to everything to the point that it is overwhelming and it will kill you if you let it. And what was your original question?
You're on the question. You're doing great.
Just keep going.
Don't stop now.
Well, what was I supposed to get at?
We're just talking about Sara and your take on her.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just your take on who she is.
Yeah, that's Sara's deal. Sara is a creature in change. She's going from the super hyper focused to now having been blown open by this experience. But here's another major, you know, departure from the original series, is that like in the same, like Sara has such a singular history. You know, we were even asked this like earlier, maybe in a little sort of tongue-in-cheek way on the retailer call, but you know, people asked about, you know, the sexuality, and asked about like, you know, like the skimpy outfit. And here's the thing, like I feel like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Sara is a character who has a multi-decade long public relationship with her body in a way that no other heroine has. You know, a lot of people feel like sort of the pendulum swing need to overcorrect, that it's like, okay, well, this was considered, you know, sexualized in the past, and so we need to cover her up and that will solve the problem. That is not a problem, and that does not need to be solved. The issue at hand is the difference between sexualized and sexy. And those are two really different things. And so sexualized is being reduced to an inert object. You exist to be acted upon. You exist to give pleasure to someone else's gaze or someone else's imagination. You have no thoughts in your head. You are just an empty receptacle awaiting use by a, you know, I'm not gonna characterize it further. Whereas sexy involves demonstrating personhood and ownership over your body, a desire of your own, you know, for pleasure, for connection, for contact, for understanding, you know, for compassion, for interactivity with other people or the world. And so in that regard, I wanted Sara at all times to be sexy, you know, or not at all times, but never to be sexualized, but to be sexy. I mean, like, you know, she is learning, she's opening up, you know, neurons are firing, nerve endings, you know, are sparkling for the first time, and she's letting herself feel these things, and it's overwhelming. And it's like, part of it is repulsive to her, where it's like, I feel so friggin' needy and like horny and distracted, and this is awful. And you know, so that's part of it, is honestly the humor of this, you know, in the midst of all this horror and darkness and revenge. You know, for the first time, she also has to like grapple, you know, with being a woman in the modern world and having a body that is viewed as public property. And so, you know, beginning, you know, Sara's relationship to the Witchblade, again, like she was, when I couldn't believe that Marc would, like, you know, chose me to write it, because it was like, this is like the only heroine that you could tell a story like this with, the only one out of, you know, 100 years of comics, with Sara Pezzini. And you know, her abilities came from, if you want to look at it in sort of like a clinical, you know, feminism 202 class, came from this external object, a literal object, you know, crashing onto her body and attaching to her body without consent. And it gives her power, but it also, you know, all of this is happening without her say so, without her okay. And so it's that she can't get rid of it, she can't remove it. She's now, you know, beholden to go on these tasks and these quests. And so in that way, it was, okay, this gives you strength, this gives you the ability to defend yourself, this gives you, you know, this connection and delight in the world, but it also means surrendering a degree of control over your body, a really big degree of control, if we're going to be honest. And so in that way, it was this chance to be like, okay, well, what does it mean to be a woman in 2024 and try to navigate, you know, having a body, being a woman, trying to do the right thing when you don't feel like you even own yourself. And it has been such a, I hate the word juicy, but it's so juicy. It's like there's so much to explore. I mean, just I love this project. I mean, it took us 5 years, and I have never lost hope and never lost faith. I am so devoted to this project.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, did that answer the question?
Yeah, just
That answered it.
More on Sara and the Witchblade.
Yeah.
So the Witchblade increases the strength of its hosts. The hosts are strong enough to overpower humans, fight supernatural. Why do you think it's drawn to Sara? Like, not necessarily from the original, but for you personally, like, why do you think it's drawn to Sara?
I know the answer, and I can't tell you.
Yeah.
It's a good answer too.
Spoiler. It is a good answer. No, and you know, everything that Marguerite just described is one of the main reasons why I love working with her so much, right? Because she has such a strong connection to the character of Sara Pezzini. And you know, we've said this in other interviews, that it's very, very important. And we're both believers of this, because we love movies and books and comics, obviously. And the best stories, no matter how crazy the world is, and Sara's world is now crazy, right? Marguerite pulls no punches with the supernatural. She goes there hard, right? But we have two types of monsters here. We have the supernatural monster and we have the human monster, right? And Sara is now stuck between those two monsters. And we also have the monsters within her that up until this point have held her back as a full-fledged person, right? So all that stuff means nothing unless it's motivated. All this incredible world, right? This sometimes matrixy world of the supernatural means nothing unless your main character is driving the story all the way through it. And the main character, Sara, is the one who is pulling us through her decision making, good and bad, from one issue to the next, an irresistible force. Then that makes this crazy ass supernatural world that she now is privy to make sense. And it makes it that much more entertaining because we have this person, this real three-dimensional person that is bringing us and this world together. And I think that's the key, right? You look at all the best genre movies out there, they all remember that, right? It's the person. It is your lead character or characters sometimes, but primarily your lead character that is driving the plot and is driving the world. I don't care how crazy your world is. If you buy into your lead character living in that world, you buy that world. And that's one of the things that Marguerite does so well, right? Which is just, you're going to love it. Yeah. And like you said, you love the first issue, and it just gets, I think, even better from there.
Can you talk about any returning characters?
No.
Can we talk about any crossover with Jackie Estacado?
Well, here's the thing that we can talk about is that this is a reimagining of the supernatural arm of the TOPCOW universe, right? And we have two key players there, Sara Pezzini and Jackie Estacado. So for people who pick up issue number 1, and there better be a lot of you out there because otherwise you're going to cry, there's Easter eggs in there. In fact, on the first page, there's an Easter egg in there that people look. But yes, we are bringing the darkness back next year. And they do share the same universe, and we do have some plans where that's going to matter. And in fact, oh no, that's spoilery. No, I'm not going to say that. Sorry. But we have plans, and we see lots of stuff in this first little mini arc that we have. We see lots of stuff that's coming because the darkness is coming back. Jackie Estacado is coming back early next year. I'm writing this one myself.
Oh,
so yeah, I'm pretty jazzed about it. I had a great time writing this Batman Joker thing that just came out a year ago or so. And I said, I want to do more of this. So I'm writing the darkness myself, and just like what we're doing with Sara, it's a reimagining. The origin is very familiar. It's like, hey, you don't mess with Superman's origin too much. He comes from Krypton. He landed in the Midwest and wound up with the world's greatest foster parents, right? Well, that was lucky. But that's his origin, right? And he becomes Clark Kent, alter ego, right? So you don't mess with that, right? So we're not messing with the core origins here per se. We're tweaking them a little bit. So for the new readers, this is all very, very welcoming, right? They don't need to see anything else beforehand, right? And I know that's a big complaint with Marvel movies and all that stuff and Marvel comics. Like, oh my God, there's no jumping on place anywhere. This, by design, both the Witchblade and the Darkness, these are jumping on points, right? So new readers don't need to know anything about these characters, other than they're just awesome. And longtime readers who we cherish, obviously the two of you are long-term readers, and I cherish you, right? So we want to make sure that they are reintroduced, right, to something that's familiar. They'll get it right away. Oh, this is Sara Pezzini, a little bit, darker and a little more injured as a human being. And then this is Jackie Estacado, right? And it's like, oh, I recognize that. We're not too far off the mark there. And then what we do is we reward new and old readers with brand new stories, right? After we get the introductions out of the way, which are fun, we now veer into new territory, right? Have some great old characters that are fan favorites and personal favorites as creators. Obviously Kenneth Irons is in there, Nottingham is in there, because why not? Of course, everyone loves them, and they're great villains and great anti-heroes. And same thing with Jackie Estacado's world too. These are familiar characters. I've changed some of the relationships a little bit. Both of us have cranked up the action and the characters past 11, on the Spinal Tap volume knob, we're at 12, right? So, and we're having a great time. and hopefully the reader does as well with us. But that's basically what we're looking at doing. Is everyone is welcome, and we believe that there's something in here for everyone to enjoy. And if you like the genre of fantastic thriller with the supernatural thrown in there, horror thrown in there, I would say very deep character development along with all of that. And one of the things that we're very conscious of is like, sure, it's fun to have that stuff, and you got to have that stuff. You have to have the deep character development, but not at the expense of the thrill, right? So they blend together. And again, that's why it's so important that Sara makes a decision that affects the story. The story doesn't affect Sara. She affects the story. That's what keeps you going. That's what you can have as many thrilling action set pieces as you want, which we do. We do not hold back. And look, I'm a guy of the 90s, for God's sake. It's like, well, give me big, right? And we have plenty of big. And it's fun because we all want to see that. But at the same time, the big doesn't matter if the small doesn't hit you in the heart, right? And we make sure that happens, right? So that when the big happens, the big is a payoff because we know that the characters that we love are going to feel something because of that, right? Which means you're going to feel something as the reader. So that's our maxim, right? That's what we look at and go, oh, now we can do whatever we want.
In terms of the lore, can we talk a little bit about the mystical artifacts? So the Witchblade is like a conscious, intelligent, ancient weapon. It has supernatural origins. It's one of 13 like mystical artifacts. 9 have been revealed. Are we gonna kind of see a little bit of that, like the darkness, the Emberstone, the blood sword, the spear of destiny? Are we allowed to talk about any of that?
Well, you just did, and that's about as much as we're allowed to talk about. So I guess the answer to that is yes. You just answered your own question. Yeah, because there's a lot of cool stuff in there to be mined from, right? And why limit ourselves? There's so many stories to tell that have not been told yet with these really cool characters, right? So that we're going to do that, and us as creators, we're just going to have a great time. I'm just saying that right now. I'm going to speak for both of us on that one. And we believe, because we're also fans who want to read this stuff and we want to be entertained by this stuff, we believe that you will be entertained as well. And there's going to be lots and lots and lots of cool Easter eggs and lots of little things like, oh my God, like old time readers are going to go, I saw that. Wait a minute. You tried to get that little piece of panel tasking. I saw that. But our goal is like, we're not going to just tease with no payoff. Right. So any little Easter eggs we leave, there's a reason for that.
And what's your kind of like work routine like? How does your typical day go, like working on this project? Do you kind of like come up with a concept, present it to Giuseppe and Marc, and kind of go from there? What's kind of like the, I guess, the schedule of things, like in terms of creative freedom?
Let's see. I mean, the big thing was I just had a document that I kept for like months where I would just put any little odd visual image, line. This would be neat. This would be cool. And just, reduced and reduced and reduced that like a sauce in a saucepan until only the good ones were left, and then put that into an outline, to send to the team and to get feedback and notes and like, oh, you could punch this up here. This would be a great place to, theoretically reintroduce a character here. And no, and then so that would be the macro plane of things, and then I take it and do a script over the course of about 10 days, and then hand that back in, and then get feedback, and then we can punch it up and make it even like wilder and weirder. And then it goes to Giuseppe, who turns it in like overnight, like basically, and then I have to come up with a new script immediately.
What a wonderful problem to have.
I know. The most champagne problem. This dedication.
Just today we had a TOPCOW Zoom meeting, and Giuseppe's just great. He's such a perfect match with Marguerite, and we have Arif Prianto with the colors, so it's lush and beautiful, and Troy Petrie with these like amazingly creative, lettering and balloon choices that he does. But we had this meeting today, and one of the questions that always comes up, because we're talking, Marguerite, you and I, we're going to have our little creative Zoom coming up, and so the question always comes up, do we have something to keep Giuseppe busy? It's like, where is he? Did he finish this one already? And like Phil Smith, who does production over there, is like, yeah, he just handed in the last page of this issue. I'm like, oh, God damn it. I gotta get on my notes for Marguerite and stuff, get him to work. But I mean, he's the fastest freaking artist I've ever worked with, and I've been in this business for more than 40 years. So, but I mean, again, it's a wonderful problem because it doesn't look rushed. But he's just a maniac. And so it's terrific. But yeah, he's great. So we always have to. And Marguerite says, the one thing I don't ever want to do is I don't want my artist to be not busy, right? Yeah. So she's, I feel bad sometimes, it's like because she's got to like keep him working. But yeah, we're so far ahead for people that ever wonder about what our schedule is. Yeah, it's a monthly book. We could make it twice a month with this guy.
Yeah, yes,
but we're on issue 8 in the can. Before issue 1 even comes out. Yeah. So we're good to go there. So anyone that's going, hey, is this going to be a monthly book? Oh yeah. And we're going to keep going with this one.
All right.
And again, there's so many stories to be told with this character that I don't know, Marguerite, if you're up for it, I'm looking in the hundreds here with you. So we could just keep going forever.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And a little bit more on like your careers and I guess kind of like giving back essentially and inspiring other like future artists. What's kind of like the most important thing or big idea that you've learned in or out of comics? The biggest piece of advice you've been given?
No, that's a tricky one. I guess, one of the biggest and most important ones for me that I would number one pass down to other people is not the like write every day or spend 6 hours in the chair or any of that, but it's that a rising tide raises all ships. And that, if you want to be part of this community, start with the community around you. The friends that I have now, we were all little comics babies, 15 years ago. And, some of my most important collaborators and co-writers, we were students together. Where I met them like the first, second year, of the convention circuit, sleeping on each other's floors. Like when one of us would get a comped hotel room and see how many of
you damn hippies. Please.
And so, but those are the people you grow with. Those are the readers, that you can be like, I need eyes on this script. Am I being insane right now? And those are the people that you can go to. And, so I would start, they're always asking like, how do I break into comics? And they tell me, well, I want to be friends with so-and-so. And it's like, be friends with your friend right now, because one day one of them will be so-and-so, or you will be like, it's, don't chase after other people's friend groups. Like start with your friend group and believe in each other and support each other. And I'm stoked.
Because you are the cool kids. That's what you are, the cool kids. I guess for me, to kind of like, I guess it kind of riffs off of what Marguerite just said, but surround yourself and work with people that lift you. Yeah. Don't drag you down, right? Work with creative people that make you more creative, right? Because that's very important. Because there are creatives that just suck the life out of you, right? And it's just who they are. But I don't want to work with them, right? When I work with Marguerite, it's a pleasure. It just is. I think we feed off each other really well. And one of the things, having a working studio for so many years with TOPCOW and working with this, raw talent, it was always about lifting them. Right? I never wanted someone to draw like me. That wasn't the point. Thank goodness for them. But what I wanted and what I found that I got to be pretty good at was like finding what they saw, right? What was it that was coming from them, and then encourage that to come out more, right? Just lift just lifting. It's about lifting, right? And working with people and just I mean, that's the best advice I could give to someone getting in the businesses. Make sure to surround yourself with people that are not toxic, right? Because that's not going to help you in any way, right? And there's plenty of wonderful people in this industry, right? So seek them out. And if it's like what Marguerite described as family and friends that you trust and you're close to, that's important. All right. So and comics is a fraction of the issues that Hollywood has. Right? So and I always tell people this also because we've dipped our toes a lot, and I've met a lot of screenwriters, and Marguerite, she works in that field too. It's like and I've heard this from screenwriters and people who work in television who've also worked in comics, and they all agree. It's like, and I feel the same way. There's simply no better way of achieving creative freedom and getting your ideas out there than a comic book, because there's no interference, right? Nobody can just tell you no, right? So, and that is not the case anywhere else at all. And it's again, it's one of the reasons why I love this medium so much. We can just do what the hell we want, basically. And the reason why we can do that, again, is because of people like yourself that support comics and love comics and read comics and have shelves of actual comic books behind you. So, thank you. Otherwise, we couldn't do this. And what the hell else am I going to do?
And before we wrap, any last thoughts? Anything else you're allowed to tell us that we haven't touched? Or
go ahead, Marguerite. Throw a tease out there.
Any teasers?
We cut one thing for being too sexy.
Oh.
that is the trivia, and then
yeah. Just in case anyone was worried about we're going to take the sex appeal away from them. Oh my god. Trust me on this one. It was actually pretty awesome because it's a great gag that Marguerite puts in there, right? And I mean, it's just a great gag. But when first,
you don't have to elaborate. Leave it for mystery.
Yeah, it's just a great gag.
Speculation years from now.
It's just a great gag in there. That's just funny. But we had to work with it. But if anybody was worried that this book is in any way prudish,
no,
it's not prudish at all. It like Sara herself, it is all about unleashing the inner human, and we all know what we're made of, right? So it's awesome. It's just awesome.
So TOPCOW was founded in December of 1992 by Marc, who was also a co-founder of Image Comics the same year. TOPCOW currently publishes this line of comic books in 21 languages, I read, in over 55 countries. The company has launched over 20 franchises, and it's in the industry's top 10, 7 at number 1, a feat accomplished by no other publisher in the last 2 decades. So Witchblade #1 will be available at comic book shops on Wednesday, July 17th. Make sure to pick it up. It's 48 pages. The final order cutoff deadline for comic shop retailers is actually on Monday. So that's coming up. We have actually a cover by Marc, and I hope I'm saying this right, Arif Prianto in full color. Giuseppe is also going to have a full color. There's going to be a blank sketch cover. So will you guys be at San Diego?
Absolutely. We have a booth down there. Are you going to be there?
Yes.
Yes, then you have to come by.
I will be bringing a blank sketch cover.
Oh, nice. Marguerite, are you going to be in San Diego this year?
So I haven't done a show in 5 years.
Oh.
Yeah.
I haven't done a signing, a comic book, anything in 5 years. But I am currently being sweet talked.
Let's do it.
I'm down for one day for one signing. So I will do my best to see you there.
Yay, I hope so.
Well, if you want to, the TOPCOW booth will be open for you.
I think we can make something work.
I think we should have that conversation. Okay, good. Yes.
There will be a cover by Danny and Brad Simpson, Marc and Arif Prianto, another cover. Oh, J. Scott Campbell, Bill Sienkiewicz, and a line art by Marc. Is that going to be one that we can color?
If you feel like it,
Ooh, fun.
you can color it in or if you want. Yeah, it's black and white. We have TopCow exclusive that will be available at San Diego Comic Con and also on the TopCow store. But we have some incredible covers by some incredible talents. We've like it's an embarrassment of creative and artistic riches for issue number one. But again, thank you for your support, and all this wouldn't be possible without you guys. So we really appreciate it. And yes, get your copy. If you have not ordered one yet from your local comic shop, please do, because this is a guarantee that it's going to be gone. It's going to be gone, and you don't want to miss out.
And it will also be available across digital platforms, including Amazon, Kindle, Apple Books, and Google Play.
Absolutely.
So make sure to follow these guys. Follow TopCow. Obviously, you should already be following them, and Image Comics and TopCow. But if you're not, follow them and keep a lookout for Witchblade 1 coming soon.